Why do some ideas survive for thousands of years when entire empires crumble to dust? It is because they are built on a foundation more durable than stone. The ancient philosophy of Stoicism offers a powerful example, a system of thought designed not just to be understood, but to be lived. As Seneca once wrote, we must build our lives carefully, for a shaky foundation dooms the entire structure. This is an exploration of that very architecture. We will journey into the heart of the original Stoic schools, uncovering their physical spaces and their philosophical pillars. We will trace how their blueprints for virtue were adapted across centuries, influencing everything from Roman law to modern psychology. By the end, you will possess a clear understanding of this timeless framework, giving you the tools to construct a more resilient and meaningful life. How did a philosophy born under a painted porch in Athens come to shape the minds of emperors and the routines of millions today? What hidden design allows it to remain so profoundly relevant in our chaotic modern world? What is the one cornerstone you would choose to build your own life upon right now? Athens in the early 3rd century before the Common Era was a city alive with ideas. Its central agora was more than a marketplace for goods. It was a bustling crossroads for the human mind. Here, merchants haggled next to politicians debating, and artists shared their work alongside philosophers challenging every assumption. It was in this vibrant, noisy center of Athenian life that a shipwrecked merchant from Cyprus named Zeno decided to plant his flag. He chose a specific spot, a long, covered colonnade known as the Painted Porch or Stoa Poikile. This was not a secluded academy or a private garden. It was a public thoroughfare open to all who passed by. Zeno's choice of location was a statement in itself. Philosophy, he believed, was not an elite pursuit for the few, but a practical tool for the many, to be debated and practiced in the full view of everyday life. Zeno had been a student of the Cynics, who championed a life of radical austerity and rejection of social conventions, but his own vision evolved into something more structured and accessible. He built his school around 3 core pillars, creating a complete system for understanding the world and our place in it. First was logic, the sharp tool for cutting through faulty reasoning and discerning truth from falsehood. Second was physics, the study of nature and the universal reason that governs everything, a concept the Stoics called logos. And the third, the ultimate goal, was ethics, the art of living a good and virtuous life in harmony with that natural order. Zeno taught that our chief aim is to live consistently with nature. As he put it, happiness is found in a smooth flow of life, a state achieved when our actions and desires align with the rational structure of the cosmos itself. Think of the Stoa not as a quiet lecture hall, but as the ancient equivalent of a university quad or a vibrant online forum. It was a philosophical marketplace. Students and skeptics alike would gather not to receive dogma but to engage. They would question, argue, and test these ideas against the realities of their own experiences. The teachings were meant to be applied immediately, to navigate the grief of a personal loss, the sting of an insult, or the temptations of public success. So where is your Stoa today? Where is that public space, physical or digital, where you actively engage with ideas that challenge and improve you? Is it a book club, a discussion group, a corner of the internet dedicated to growth, or simply a daily conversation with a thoughtful friend? Your own journey of building a resilient life begins by finding or creating your own agora. This entire philosophical structure rests on 3 interconnected pillars: logic, physics, and ethics. Think of them not as separate subjects, but as the 3 essential columns holding up the entire Stoic worldview. If one is removed, the entire structure becomes unstable and risks collapse. The first pillar, logic, is the tool for sharpening the mind. It is the discipline of assenting only to what is true, of questioning our initial impressions, and of spotting the flaws in our own reasoning before they lead us astray. The second pillar, physics, is the study of nature and the cosmos. For the Stoics, this meant understanding that a rational principle, the logos, governs everything. It is the recognition that we are part of a vast, interconnected, and orderly whole. The third pillar, ethics, is the ultimate aim, the art of living well. It asks the central question, how then shall we live, and provides the answer, by living in accordance with that rational nature, cultivating virtue above all else. The philosopher Epictetus beautifully captured their interdependence. He said that just as the foot's nature is to be clean, but it will step into mud if it serves the whole body, so too must we sometimes accept a lesser personal inconvenience for the sake of the greater, rational whole. This seamless integration is what makes the system so powerful. To see how they work together, picture a simple three-legged stool. One leg is logic, your capacity for clear judgment. Another is physics, your understanding of the world's natural order. The third is ethics, your commitment to virtuous action. If the leg of logic is weak, your understanding of the world is based on error, and your actions will be misguided. If the leg of physics is missing, you lose your sense of place in the cosmos, acting as if you are separate from the whole. And if the leg of ethics is neglected, all your clear thinking and cosmic knowledge becomes a sterile intellectual exercise with no real impact on your life. The stool only stands firm when all three legs are solid and of equal length. So, as you reflect on your own approach to life, which of these three pillars feels most natural to you? Are you someone who instinctively relies on logic, analyzing every situation with a critical mind? Or do you lean more toward the physics pillar, feeling a deep connection to nature and the flow of the universe? And what about the ethical pillar, the daily practice of turning knowledge into right action? More importantly, which of these three foundational supports have you perhaps been neglecting in your own personal construction? What are the fundamental qualities of a well-lived life? For the Stoics, the answer was not found in a long list of complicated rules, but in four timeless principles that formed the very blueprint for human excellence. These are the four cardinal virtues: wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. They were not seen as abstract ideals to be admired from a distance, but as practical skills to be honed through daily practice, the essential tools for building a resilient and meaningful character. Wisdom is the master skill, the ability to see the world clearly and to navigate it with sound judgment. It is knowing what is truly good, what is truly bad, and what is simply indifferent beyond our control. It is the voice of reason that cuts through confusion and fear. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the strength to act rightly in spite of it. It is the virtue that allows you to speak your truth when it is easier to stay silent, to stand for your principles when you face pressure to conform, and to accept hardship without complaint. Justice is the social virtue, the commitment to treating every person with fairness and kindness. It is the understanding that we are all part of a common humanity, and that our actions should contribute to the good of the whole. And temperance is the art of self-mastery, the discipline of moderating our desires and impulses. It is knowing when enough is enough, and finding freedom not in having everything you want, but in not being controlled by your wants. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor, constantly reminded himself of this blueprint in his private meditations. He wrote that you must be like the rocky promontory against which the waves continually break, but it stands firm and the waters are stilled around it. He was not telling himself to become emotionally cold, but to embody these virtues with unwavering stability, to be governed by wisdom, fortified by courage, guided by justice, and restrained by temperance. Imagine you are about to have a difficult conversation with a coworker. Wisdom helps you discern the true issue at hand, separating facts from emotional reactions. Courage gives you the strength to initiate the talk and to say what needs to be said with honesty. Justice ensures you listen to their perspective with fairness and respect their dignity. And temperance prevents you from speaking in anger or from dominating the conversation to satisfy your own ego. This is how the blueprint comes to life, not in grand gestures, but in these small, daily applications. Think back to a recent situation in your own life, a moment of frustration, a minor conflict, or a small temptation. Which of these four virtues, wisdom, courage, justice, or temperance, could you have called upon more fully? How would applying that single virtue have changed the outcome, not for the world, but for the quality of your own character in that moment? A philosophy born in the bustling Athenian Agora could not remain confined to its painted porch. As the center of gravity in the ancient world shifted west, Stoicism embarked on its own journey across the Mediterranean, carried by diplomats, scholars, and merchants into the heart of the rising Roman Republic. This was not a simple translation of texts, but a profound cultural renovation. The Roman mind, pragmatic and disciplined, was less interested in theoretical debates about logic and more concerned with a single, pressing question: how can this philosophy serve the state and strengthen the character of its citizens? It was a shift from debating the nature of the good to building it, stone by stone, in the forum and on the battlefield. Key figures acted as architects of this transition. Philosophers like Panaetius and Posidonius spent years in Rome, moving in the highest circles of power. They consciously reframed Stoic principles, emphasizing the concepts of duty, honor, and unwavering service to the community. For them, living in accordance with nature did not mean a quiet life of contemplation, but an active life of public responsibility. The Greek ideal of the wise man became the Roman ideal of the virtuous citizen soldier, the patrician who leads with integrity and accepts his fate without flinching. The Roman orator and statesman Cicero, though not a strict Stoic himself, became one of the most influential conduits for these ideas. His vast body of work, from his letters to his philosophical treatises, is saturated with this adapted Stoic thought. He argued that the only true good is moral good, and that virtue is sufficient for a happy life, ideas that would become bedrock principles for Rome's governing class. Consider the practical difference this made. In Athens, a Stoic student might debate the logical fallacies in an argument about the nature of the divine logos. In Rome, a senator like Cato the Younger would apply that same rigorous logic to dissect a proposed law, then summon his courage to defend the republic against corruption, and exercise his justice by considering the law's impact on every citizen from the highest to the lowest. The philosophy was no longer just a set of ideas to discuss. It was a toolkit for leadership and personal resilience in the face of immense power and peril. The classroom had moved into the Senate House and the military camp. This historical adaptation invites a personal reflection. You are living in your own unique time and culture, with its own distinct pressures and values. How do you, like those Roman thinkers, take a powerful idea and renovate it for your own life? When you encounter a principle like focusing only on what you can control, how do you translate it from a philosophical concept into a practical strategy for your workplace, your family, or your inner world? The core pillars remain, but the architecture of your application must be your own design. Three master builders left us the most complete blueprints for this resilient life, yet they worked from entirely different sites. One was a wealthy statesman entangled in the corrupt court of an emperor. Another was a former slave who opened his own school. The third was the emperor himself, the most powerful man in the world. Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius each lived Stoicism through vastly different circumstances, proving its architecture was not a one-size-fits-all design but a universal framework adaptable to any human condition. Seneca the advisor navigated the treacherous politics of Nero's Rome. His greatest contributions were his letters and essays, which delved deeply into the inner landscape of the mind. He focused on the daily management of our emotions, particularly anger and anxiety. He wrote that we suffer more often in imagination than in reality, a piercing insight for anyone caught in the spiral of worry about events that may never happen. Imagine applying Seneca's wisdom to a moment of modern workplace stress. You receive a harsh, unfair email from your boss. The immediate impulse is to fire back an angry reply. But Seneca would advise a pause, a moment to interrogate that first impression. Is the offense truly in the things themselves or in your judgment about them? By separating the event from your heated reaction, you create a space for a wiser, more measured response. Epictetus, who began his life as a slave, focused his teachings with relentless clarity on a single, liberating distinction. Some things are up to us and some things are not up to us. Our opinions, our impulses, our desires, and our aversions are within our control. Our bodies, our possessions, our reputations, and our public offices are not. He taught that freedom is found in ceasing to demand that events happen as you wish, and instead wishing them to happen as they do. His famous quote captures this essence: "Do not seek for events to happen as you wish, but wish for events to happen as they do, and your life will go smoothly." This is the ultimate tool for relinquishing frustration over traffic jams, cancelled plans, or the opinions of others. Then there was Marcus Aurelius, the emperor who spent his reign on military campaigns, battling invaders and managing a vast empire. His journal, known as the Meditations, was never intended for publication. It was a private dialogue with himself, a nightly ritual to reinforce his duty and strengthen his character against the immense temptations of absolute power. He constantly reminded himself of his purpose: do what is necessary, and whatever the reasonable creature can require, do it, and say what seems to you most just, though it might be that another will have something to say. His focus was on action, on justice, and on accepting his role in the great web of human society without complaint: a statesman, a slave, and an emperor. One wrote about taming the inner world of a privileged life. One taught about the freedom found through radical acceptance from a position of former bondage. One documented his struggle to remain virtuous while wielding ultimate authority. So, whose circumstances speak most directly to you? Is it Seneca's challenge of managing your inner life amidst external chaos and social pressure? Is it Epictetus's clear-eyed focus on controlling only your judgments, a message for anyone feeling powerless in their situation? Or is it Marcus Aurelius's lifelong battle to fulfill his duty with integrity, a resonant struggle for anyone in a position of leadership or responsibility? Their lives were different, but the architectural principles they built upon were the same. That scaffolding of Stoic thought was a discipline of relentless mental rigor. While Zeno laid the foundation, it was his successor Chrysippus who meticulously constructed its intellectual framework, so vital that a saying emerged: had there been no Chrysippus, there would have been no Stoa. His work was the library that housed the system, a vast collection of logical treatises that became the essential tool for every student of the philosophy. For the Stoics, logic was not a dry academic exercise. It was the whetstone on which you sharpened your mind to cut through deception and error. They called this practice dialectic, the art of conversation and debate, both with others and, more importantly, with yourself. Its primary purpose was to test your impressions, those initial, often flawed, interpretations of the events happening around you. An impression is not a simple fact. It is a package deal that includes the raw event and your instant, unconscious judgment about it. For example, your boss giving you a critical look is the raw event. The immediate thought, "He hates me and I am going to be fired," is the impression. Stoic logic demands you pause and unpack that package before you assent to its truth. You must become a detective of your own mind, questioning the evidence. Is it absolutely true that this single look means hatred and imminent dismissal? What other, more reasonable explanations could exist? Perhaps he is preoccupied with his own pressures, or maybe the feedback, while poorly delivered, is simply about a specific task and not a judgment on your entire worth. This is the scaffolding at work, preventing you from building a towering edifice of anxiety on a shaky foundation of assumption. Epictetus, who studied Chrysippus deeply, was adamant about this for anyone making progress. He said the first and most necessary area of philosophy is that of the use of principles. The second is that of demonstrations. The third is that of the proofs for these demonstrations. Without the second and third, the first is insecure. In other words, your ethical principles about courage and justice are useless if you cannot logically demonstrate why they are true and defend them against your own irrationality. Imagine applying this to a modern moment of catastrophizing. You send a text to a friend and receive no reply. The unchecked impression quickly spirals. They are ignoring me. I must have done something wrong. Our friendship is over. Now apply the Stoic tool. Stop and break down the chain of logic. What is the indisputable fact? The fact is that a message was sent and no reply has been received yet. Everything else is your judgment layered on top. Is there proof that the silence is intentional and malicious? Could there be a dozen other reasons, from a dead phone battery to a busy workday, that have nothing to do with you? By scrutinizing the impression, you dismantle the catastrophe and return to the solid ground of what you actually know. This is not about suppressing emotion, but about preceding it with clear thinking. So, bring this scaffolding to one of your own beliefs. What is a recurring, nagging thought that causes you distress? Perhaps it is the belief that you must be perfect to be valued, or that a particular setback has ruined your entire future. Take a moment to interrogate it. What is the core, objective fact at the center of this belief? What is the unproven story you are telling yourself about that fact? And if you chose to withhold your assent from that story, what sturdier, more rational judgment could you build in its place? The stars trace their eternal paths across the night sky, and the seasons turn in an unbreakable rhythm. Behind this breathtaking order, the Stoics perceived a single, unifying force, a divine reason they called the Logos. This was the heart of their physics, the study of the universe not as a chaotic accident, but as a perfectly rational and providential whole. They saw the cosmos as a single, living being, and every event within it, from the grandest supernova to the falling of a single leaf, as an expression of its intelligent design. Understanding this was not an academic exercise. It was the key to genuine acceptance and profound resilience. The philosopher Cleans, who succeeded Zeno, captured this reverent awe in his hymn to Zeus. He wrote, "Lead me on, O Zeus, and thou destiny, to that goal long ago to me assigned. I will follow without hesitation. Were I to become wicked and rebel, I would follow none the less." This is not a prayer of passive surrender, but an active embrace of one's place within the grand, rational narrative of the universe. It is the recognition that fighting against the nature of reality is the source of all our suffering. We can see echoes of this interconnected rationality in modern scientific understanding. Think of a vast forest ecosystem. A single tree falls in a storm. To the tree, this is a catastrophe, the end of its life. But from the perspective of the forest, the fallen tree becomes a nurse log, providing nutrients for new seedlings, a habitat for insects, and a reshaping of the light on the forest floor. The event is not good or bad in an absolute sense. It is simply a part of the system's ongoing, intelligent process of life, death, and regeneration. The logos is the ultimate ecosystem, and we are each a part of its intricate web. How can you apply this cosmic perspective to a recent personal setback? Perhaps a project at work failed unexpectedly, or a relationship you valued came to an end. The immediate impression is one of pure loss, a frustrating disruption of your plans. But what if you viewed it through the lens of Stoic physics? What if this event, however painful, is like that fallen tree? It is not a random punishment or a meaningless error, but a necessary part of a larger, rational order you cannot yet fully see. It might be creating space for a new opportunity, teaching you a lesson in humility, or redirecting your path towards something more aligned with your true nature. Your disappointment is real, but your resistance to the event's inherent place in the flow of nature is what amplifies the pain. By aligning your will with the logos, you trade frustration for a deeper, more resilient form of trust. Yet even the most solid blueprints can be renovated for a new generation. The original Stoic school, with its sharp focus on logic and unwavering virtue, began to soften its edges as it encountered other powerful schools of thought. This was the era of the Middle Stoa, a period of philosophical expansion where thinkers like Panaetius and Posidonius started to incorporate elements from Plato and Aristotle into the Stoic framework. They were not tearing down the original structure, but adding new wings and rooms, making it more habitable for the complex reality of human emotion. Panaetius, who taught in Rome, argued that the ideal of the perfectly wise sage, utterly free from passion, was an unrealistic standard for most people. He shifted the focus toward the concept of the progressor, the individual who is always striving toward virtue, even while acknowledging their own flaws and emotional responses. This was a profound humanization of the philosophy. It became less about achieving a state of impossible perfection and more about the dignity of the daily effort. His student Posidonius took this even further with his pioneering work on the human soul, where earlier Stoics saw emotions as errors in judgment to be extinguished. Posidonius viewed them as powerful, natural forces that needed to be understood and channeled, not simply denied. He believed that philosophy must engage with the whole person, including the irrational parts of our psyche that Plato had so vividly described. This was a move toward a more psychologically nuanced model of the mind. Think of it like modern psychology. You would not expect a therapist to use only one single approach for every client. A skilled therapist might blend cognitive behavioral therapy, which echoes the Stoic practice of questioning thoughts, with more humanistic or psychodynamic approaches that explore deeper emotional patterns and childhood influences. This eclectic method is often more effective because it respects the complexity of the person. Posidonius was doing something similar 2,000 years ago, blending the Stoic toolkit with insights from other traditions to create a more comprehensive guide for living. So, as you build your own resilient life, what other wisdom traditions could you blend with your Stoic foundation? Perhaps the mindfulness of Buddhism helps you observe your impressions without immediate judgment. Maybe the communal focus of certain religious traditions strengthens your practice of the virtue of justice, or the creative expression found in the arts gives voice to emotions that logic alone cannot fully process. Your personal philosophy does not need to be a purist's fortress. It can be a living, evolving home constructed from the strongest and most useful materials you discover, wherever you may find them. People need a place of peace that is entirely their own. Marcus Aurelius described this sanctuary in his private writings, advising himself to retreat into the self, for nowhere can you find a more peaceful and less busy refuge. This is the architecture of the Inner Citadel, a fortress of the mind constructed not from stone, but from disciplined judgment and unwavering virtue. It is the ultimate realization of Stoic resilience, a stronghold where external chaos and misfortune simply cannot breach the walls. Within this citadel, you are the sole ruler, and your peace is untouchable. He wrote more explicitly of this fortress, describing how your mind becomes perfectly fortified when it withdraws into its own self-sufficiency, doing nothing which it would be unwilling for another to see. The citadel is not a place to hide from the world, but a command center from which you engage with it, protected from the emotional storms that rage outside. Its walls are built from your core principles, and its gate is guarded by your ability to question every disturbing impression that seeks entry. Imagine a personal crisis, the sudden loss of a job you valued deeply. The initial blast of shock, fear, and anger is like an army at your gate demanding surrender. The external event has happened, and you cannot change that fact. But the inner citadel is your defense. Inside its walls, you can process the news without being destroyed by it. You can separate the event itself from the catastrophic stories you might tell about it. You can access your stored virtues, the courage to face the unknown, the wisdom to see this as a redirection, not an ending, and the justice to treat yourself and others with fairness throughout the difficulty. The world outside is in turmoil, but inside you retain the clarity to make your next move from a place of calm strength. What does your own inner citadel look like when you close your eyes? Is it a quiet library filled with the books of your core values? Is it a simple, unadorned room where only truth is spoken? Or is it a high mountain fortress with a clear view of the landscape of your life? More importantly, what protects it is the gatekeeper, your practice of logic, carefully vetting every anxious thought before allowing it inside. Are the walls made from your commitment to virtue, so high that insults and failures cannot scale them? Visualizing this space makes it more real, a mental sanctuary you can actively retreat to and reinforce with every conscious choice. What would a school look like if its curriculum was not information but transformation? The ancient Stoic classroom was not a place for passive listening. It was a training ground, a gymnasium for the soul where students engaged in a series of deliberate mental and emotional exercises designed to forge an unshakable character. The goal was not to know virtue, but to become virtuous through relentless daily practice. The teacher Musonius Rufus was adamant about this distinction, declaring that just as someone who wants to be a good carpenter must build things, so one who wants to be a good person must practice being good. Philosophy was a craft, and these were its essential drills. One of the most powerful of these drills was the premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. This was not a pessimistic exercise in dwelling on the worst, but a strategic form of psychological inoculation. Students were trained to vividly imagine losing what they cherished most: their health, their wealth, their loved ones, even their own lives. By mentally rehearsing these potential losses, they accomplished two things. They diminished the sting of fear, as a familiar event, even a terrible one, is always less frightening than an unknown. And they cultivated a profound gratitude for the present moment, realizing that everything they currently possessed was a temporary gift, not a permanent possession. This practice of negative visualization is echoed in modern therapeutic techniques that encourage exposure to feared scenarios in a safe, controlled way to reduce anxiety. Alongside this, daily journaling was a cornerstone of Stoic training. This was not a simple diary of events, but a rigorous self-audit. At the end of each day, a student would ask themselves 3 probing questions. Where did I go wrong today? What virtue did I fail to exercise? And how can I do better tomorrow? This nightly review was a form of quality control for the soul, a way to catch errors in judgment and reinforce the habits of virtue. They also practiced role modeling, consciously bringing to mind the image of a wise person, perhaps Socrates or Cato, and asking themselves, what would they do in this situation? This internalized a standard of excellence, providing a constant personal mentor for moments of moral uncertainty. Think of how this compares to modern self-improvement. The Stoic spiritual exercises are the ancient ancestors of cognitive behavioral therapy, where you identify and challenge irrational thoughts, and mindfulness meditation, where you observe your mental states without immediate reaction. The Stoics were building mental fitness with the same deliberate repetition an athlete uses to build physical strength. Their classroom was a forge, and every exercise was a hammer blow shaping a more resilient self. So, as you consider your own growth, which of these ancient drills calls to you? For the next week, would you be willing to try the premeditatio, spending 5 minutes each morning mentally letting go of something you fear losing, just to feel the strength that remains? Or would you commit to the nightly journal, holding a quiet conversation with yourself about your successes and failures in living up to your principles? Which single exercise could begin the work of building your own inner citadel, one deliberate practice at a time? No philosophy, however resilient, can stand forever against the shifting tides of history. By the twilight of the Roman Empire, the great Stoic schools had faded from prominence, their halls falling silent. This was not a sudden death, but a slow fragmentation, as the political and spiritual landscape of the ancient world transformed. The rise of Christianity, with its singular divine authority and promise of an afterlife, offered a different kind of solace than the Stoic call to self-sufficient virtue. Imperial edicts closed the pagan philosophical schools in the 6th century, and the structured teaching of Stoicism as a complete system effectively came to an end. Yet its core ideas proved too durable to simply vanish. They did not die, but instead went underground, seeping into the very foundations of the new world being built. The brilliant architecture of Stoic thought was disassembled, and its strongest stones were carried away to be used in new constructions. Many of its central concepts were absorbed into the emerging framework of Neoplatonism, a philosophy that blended Plato's ideas with mystical and religious elements. Think of it as a river that seems to disappear into the desert sand, only to resurface miles away, feeding new springs and wells. The Stoic logos, the divine reason governing the cosmos, found a powerful echo in the Christian concept of the word, a rational principle through which the world was created. Early church fathers, most notably Augustine of Hippo, engaged deeply with Stoic thought. While he argued against certain Stoic positions, he also admired their ethical rigor and their focus on the inner life, incorporating their ideas on will and self-governance into his own vast theological works. This absorption continued through the centuries. During the Renaissance, as scholars rediscovered classical texts, they found in Stoicism a vision of human dignity and reason that resonated with their own ideals. The Enlightenment thinkers who championed individual rights and rational inquiry were deeply influenced by these rediscovered Stoic principles. The American founding fathers like Thomas Jefferson read and admired the Stoics, and their emphasis on duty, virtue, and natural law is woven into the fabric of early American political thought. The school was gone, but its spirit had become a ghost in the machine of Western culture, subtly shaping our ideas about resilience, justice, and what it means to live a good life. So consider your own past for a moment. What ideas from your childhood, your education, or your early influences have you consciously left behind, only to discover their fragments quietly guiding your choices and values today? For centuries, the Stoic blueprint lay fragmented, its pages scattered and its voice a distant echo. Then, in the bustling scriptoriums and newly established printing houses of the Renaissance, scholars began to piece the architecture back together. It was like discovering a lost set of plans for a forgotten but superior way to build a life. The invention of the printing press acted as a great reconstruction project, moving these texts from the private libraries of monasteries into the hands of a hungry public. Scholars like Erasmus of Rotterdam became master builders of this revival, meticulously editing and translating the works of Seneca and Epictetus, presenting them not as historical curiosities, but as vital guides for the modern mind. This widespread dissemination allowed the Stoic framework to influence a new generation of thinkers who were reshaping European thought. The French essayist Michel de Montaigne immersed himself in these rediscovered texts, and his own work became a testament to their enduring power. He wrote, "The value of the soul does not consist in flying high, but in an orderly pace. Its greatness is exercised not in greatness, but in mediocrity." This is pure Stoic practicality, a rejection of grand, unstable ambitions in favor of a steady, virtuous walk through everyday life. Montaigne's essays are filled with this spirit, applying ancient Stoic exercises to his own doubts, illnesses, and joys, demonstrating how the philosophy could be a personal toolkit for a thoughtful existence. You have likely experienced a small version of this rediscovery yourself. Perhaps you pulled an old book from a relative's shelf, its pages yellowed and brittle. As you read, a sentence written decades ago suddenly clicks into place, perfectly articulating a problem you face today. The wisdom was always there, waiting in silence, and your discovery of it feels like a personal conversation across time. The Renaissance humanists felt this same electric shock of recognition, finding in Zeno and Marcus Aurelius not outdated dogma, but a startlingly relevant operating system for the human spirit. Has there been a moment in your own life when an old piece of wisdom, perhaps from a grandparent's saying or a classic novel you finally read, suddenly became vividly alive and practical for you? That moment of reconnection is the same energy that powered the Renaissance revival, proving that the most durable blueprints are never truly lost, only waiting to be found again. This ancient idea of a cosmic city where every rational being holds citizenship would echo for centuries before finding its political voice. The Enlightenment thinkers who championed universal human rights were, in many ways, building upon a Stoic foundation. They took the concept of the logos, the rational principle governing nature, and reframed it as natural law, a universal standard of justice and morality inherent in every person. For them, reason was not just a personal tool for resilience, but the very source of human dignity and the bedrock of a just society. Figures like Baruch Spinoza, with his profound pantheistic view of God and nature, echoed the Stoic reverence for a single, rational cosmos. His ethical system, which urged acceptance of the necessary flow of the universe, is deeply Stoic in its spirit. Immanuel Kant, perhaps the greatest philosopher of the era, built his entire moral framework on a distinctly Stoic idea, autonomy. His famous categorical imperative, to act only according to that maxim whereby you can at the same time will that it should become a universal law, is a powerful expansion of the Stoic commitment to living in accordance with a universal, rational nature. It transforms the inner citadel into a legislative chamber for all humanity. The Stoics called this worldview cosmopolitanism, the belief that we are citizens of the world, not just of a single city or state. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself of this, writing, "What is not good for the swarm is not good for the bee." This was not an abstract notion. It was a radical principle of human equality and mutual obligation that directly challenged the prejudices of his time. You can see the legacy of this principle in the very documents that shape our modern world. The opening lines of the American Declaration of Independence, with its self-evident truths and inalienable rights, are a political expression of the Stoic belief in a universal natural law. The modern concept of human dignity, central to international law and human rights charters, grows from this same root, the idea that every person possesses inherent worth by virtue of their capacity for reason. So what does it truly mean to be a citizen of the world in the 21st century? It is more than just holding a passport or traveling widely. It is an active practice of widening your circle of concern. It is applying the virtue of justice not only to your family and neighbors, but to someone on the other side of the planet whose life and struggles are connected to your own through the intricate web of global society. When you choose to buy ethically sourced products, when you question nationalistic rhetoric that divides humanity into us and them, when you feel a genuine sense of responsibility for the health of our shared planet, you are exercising your Stoic citizenship. Your inner citadel is not an isolated fortress, but an embassy of a much larger, rational community. How will you enact your global citizenship today in one small, deliberate choice? The best modern therapy has ancient roots. Cognitive behavioral therapy, one of the most effective and widely practiced forms of psychological treatment today, is a direct intellectual descendant of the Stoic school. Its founders, psychologists Albert Ellis and Aaron Beck, did not hide this lineage. They openly credited Stoic philosophy as the core inspiration for their revolutionary idea that our emotions are not caused by events themselves, but by our beliefs about those events. This is the same foundational principle Epictetus articulated 2,000 years earlier when he wrote, "People are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of them." The Stoics had uncovered the architecture of human suffering, and modern science provided the clinical evidence to rebuild it. This connection is perfectly illustrated by the ABC model, a cornerstone of CBT. The A stands for the activating event, the objective situation that occurs. The B is your belief, your automatic interpretation of that event, and the C is the consequence, the emotional and behavioral reaction that follows. A Stoic would instantly recognize this framework. Imagine an ancient student walking through the Agora when a rival philosopher publicly laughs at him. The activating event is the sound of laughter. The student's initial, unchecked belief might be, "He is mocking me to humiliate me, I am a fool." The emotional consequence would be sharp anger and shame. But a student trained in Stoic logic would pause at the belief. He would interrogate that impression. Is it true that the laughter is meant as a personal attack? Could the man simply be laughing at a joke with a friend? By changing the belief to, "His laughter is none of my concern and says nothing about my worth," the emotional consequence transforms into indifference or even mild amusement. The external event remained identical, but the internal experience was completely reshaped by a single, disciplined judgment. This is not merely positive thinking. It is the rigorous practice of aligning your beliefs with reality, just as the Stoics practiced in their daily dialogues. Think of a minor annoyance you encountered this week. Perhaps you were stuck in a long, unmoving line at the grocery store. The activating event was the delay. What was the automatic belief that popped into your mind? Maybe it was, "This is a massive inconvenience. Everything is working against me. My whole schedule is ruined." Notice the emotional consequence that followed, likely feelings of frustration, impatience, and stress. Now apply the Stoic tool, challenge that belief. Is it truly a massive inconvenience, or is it a common, minor part of life? Is everything really working against you, or is this just a normal delay? What if you change the belief to, this is a few minutes of unexpected pause. I can use this time to breathe and observe my surroundings. How does that shift the emotional consequence from frustration to a state of calm acceptance? What makes some people able to bounce back from adversity while others are broken by it? Modern psychology has given a name to this quality, resilience, and its training programs are built on a foundation that would be deeply familiar to any Stoic student. The core insight of both ancient philosophy and modern science is the same. Resilience is not an innate trait you are born with, but a skill you forge through deliberate practice. The Stoics called this practice voluntary discomfort, and it is a direct parallel to the exposure therapy and stress inoculation used in contemporary resilience training. Seneca put it with typical bluntness, stating that we must set aside a certain number of days in which we shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, saying to ourselves all the while, "Is this the condition that I feared?" His point was not to glorify poverty, but to build an immunity to the fear of it. By willingly experiencing a small dose of hardship in a controlled way, you prove to yourself that you can endure far more than you imagined, and you simultaneously cultivate a profound appreciation for the comforts you usually take for granted. This principle is not confined to the philosopher's study. It is actively employed in some of the most demanding training environments on Earth. Navy SEAL candidates are subjected to brutal physical and psychological stress, not as a form of punishment, but as a calculated method to build their resilience. They are taught to focus only on what they can control in the moment, their breathing, their next stroke, their immediate task, while letting go of the larger, overwhelming picture of the pain and cold. This is a perfect, real-world application of the Stoic dichotomy of control. The candidate cannot control the freezing water, but they can control their mental response to it. By repeatedly navigating these voluntary discomforts, they forge a core of unshakable confidence that they can handle whatever chaos comes their way. The goal is to make the unfamiliar familiar so that when a real crisis strikes, the mind and body do not panic, but instead fall back on a well-rehearsed pattern of calm focus. So, what is the one small voluntary discomfort you could introduce into your own life this week? It does not need to be extreme. It could be as simple as taking a cold shower for the first minute of your morning routine, turning off the entertainment on your phone during your commute to sit with your own thoughts, or skipping a meal to better understand the sensation of real hunger. The point is not the act itself, but the mental muscle you build by choosing it. You are sending a powerful message to your own psyche that you are the kind of person who can handle discomfort, that your peace does not depend on perfect external conditions. Which single practice will you choose to start building your own modern resilience today? What does a philosopher king look like inside a corporate boardroom? He is not someone who recites ancient maxims during quarterly reports, but one who embodies the core Stoic principle that true leadership is service, not status. The Stoic model, forged in the fire of imperial duty, translates with startling clarity to modern governance and business, demanding a leader who prioritizes virtue over vanity and resilience over rapid reward. This leader understands that their primary duty is to the health of the entire organization, what Marcus Aurelius called the swarm, and that their own character is the ultimate instrument of influence. He wrote extensively on this, reminding himself to constantly ask, "How can I best serve the common good?" and to listen willingly to anyone who can offer a contribution to the truth, seeing his team not as subordinates, but as partners in a rational enterprise. The focus is never on the unpredictable outcome, the stock price, or the public opinion, but entirely on the integrity of the process, the justice of the decisions, and the courage to act rightly regardless of the consequence. Modern leaders increasingly echo this ancient blueprint. A prominent example is the former CEO of Starbucks, Howard Schultz, who often spoke of building a company with a conscience, focusing on employee welfare and social responsibility, even when it was not the most immediately profitable path. This is the Stoic virtue of justice in action, widening the circle of concern to include all stakeholders. Another is the financial author and investor Nassim Taleb, who explicitly draws on Stoic principles to discuss antifragility, the idea that some systems actually gain from disorder, much like the Stoic soul that uses hardship as fuel for growth. The resilient leader does not panic when a crisis hits because they have premeditated such scenarios. They do not lash out in anger when criticized because they have trained to separate their self-worth from external opinion. They lead with equanimity, a steady calm that comes not from ignoring problems, but from a deep trust in their own capacity to handle them with virtue. So, where is your own boardroom? Your sphere of influence may not be a global corporation, but perhaps it is a team you manage, a classroom you teach, a household you run, or simply the territory of your own life where you are the sole executive. How can you today lead with more of that Stoic equanimity? In your next decision, however small, will you choose the option that serves the common good, that exercises self-control, and that aligns your actions with your deepest principles? The internet has become our global agora, a digital crossroads where seekers from every corner of the world gather to trade not in goods, but in wisdom. This is the new Stoa, no longer confined to a single painted porch in Athens, but spanning countless screens and servers, creating a living, breathing school for 21st century Stoics. In this virtual marketplace of ideas, blogs and forums serve as the modern lecture halls, while social media groups function as intimate discussion circles, facilitating a mass dissemination of principles that would have astonished the ancient founders. The daily discourse that once echoed through the Athenian colonnade now unfolds in comment threads and live streams, proving that the human need for philosophical community is as strong as ever. The accessibility of Stoic texts today mirrors the transformative spread of literacy during the Roman era. Where once a student might have needed wealth or connections to access a single, hand-copied manuscript of Seneca's letters, anyone with an internet connection can now download the complete works of Marcus Aurelius in seconds for free. This unprecedented availability has democratized the philosophy, placing its tools directly into the hands of millions who are searching for a more resilient way to live. Online communities like the Stoicism subreddit or the Stoic Fellowship provide structured spaces for this learning, offering weekly discussions, guided meditations, and a global support network for applying these ancient ideas to contemporary problems. You can post a question about handling workplace anxiety at 3 in the morning and receive thoughtful, practical advice from a dozen different people across 3 continents by sunrise. The impact is profound. A person struggling with grief might find solace and practical steps in a shared article on Epictetus. Someone facing a financial setback can be reminded of the dichotomy of control by strangers who have endured similar trials. These digital communities create a collective memory and a shared resilience, turning individual practice into a global movement. How has your own engagement with online Stoic content shaped your journey? Perhaps a quote shared on social media stopped you in your tracks and reframed your entire day. Maybe a discussion in an online forum gave you the courage to have a difficult conversation you had been avoiding. Your personal practice, once a solitary endeavor, is now supported by a silent, worldwide community of fellow travelers, all building their inner citadels together, one digital brick at a time. It is time to step back and look at the complete blueprint we have been assembling. The entire structure of Stoicism rests on a few powerful, interlocking tenets that form a resilient system for living. At its heart is the liberating dichotomy of control, the practice of sharply distinguishing between what is up to us and what is not. Our judgments, our values, and our actions are within our sphere of command. Everything else, from our reputation to our health to the traffic on our commute, ultimately falls outside of it. Our chief task, then, is to focus all our energy on the internal world we can govern and to meet the external world with acceptance. This inner work is guided by the unwavering commitment to virtue, the belief that our character is the only true good. Wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance become the daily disciplines through which we build that character. And the ultimate purpose of it all is to live in accordance with nature, aligning our individual reason with the rational, interconnected cosmos of which we are a part. Epictetus offers a synthesizing insight in his Enchiridion, writing, "Do not seek for events to happen as you wish, but wish for events to happen as they do, and your life will go smoothly." This is the serene outcome of applying the entire system. To see these tenets working in concert, consider a single, cohesive modern scenario. Imagine you have worked for months on a major project at work, and the day of the final presentation arrives. The outcome, whether your superiors will approve the project, is not up to you. It belongs to the external world, and you release your demand for a specific result. This is the dichotomy of control in practice. What is up to you is your preparation and your conduct. You exercise the virtue of wisdom by focusing on delivering a clear, honest presentation. You summon courage to speak confidently despite your nerves. You act with justice by fairly acknowledging the contributions of your team members, and you practice temperance by managing your anxiety, not letting fear dictate your tone or actions. You walk into the room wishing for events to happen as they do, ready to accept either outcome with equanimity, because your worth is rooted in the virtue of your effort, not in the verdict of your bosses. As you reflect on this complete framework, which of these core tenets presents the greatest personal challenge for you? Is it the relentless practice of the dichotomy, continually letting go of outcomes you desperately want to control? Or is it the full commitment to virtue, choosing the harder right over the easier wrong when no one is watching? Take a moment and write down the one Stoic principle you find most difficult to live by. Great art has always wrestled with the same fundamental questions that Stoicism seeks to answer. How does a person endure suffering with dignity? How does one maintain integrity when the world demands compromise? These are the timeless human struggles, and the architecture of Stoic thought provides a hidden framework for countless stories we tell ourselves. The principles of resilience, acceptance of fate, and unwavering virtue form the invisible backbone of characters and narratives across modern literature and art, creating a living legacy far beyond the philosophy section of a library. You can find the Stoic spirit in the unyielding dignity of a Hemingway hero, facing a meaningless world with a personal code of conduct. You see it in the grim determination of a survival film, where the protagonist, stripped of everything, discovers that the only thing left to control is their own will. These stories resonate so deeply because they tap into the universal blueprint for human strength that the Stoics mapped out centuries ago. Consider the famous line from Marcus Aurelius, "The universe is change, our life is what our thoughts make it." Now think of a character like Atticus Finch from Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird. He steps into a courtroom knowing he will lose, facing the scorn of his entire town. He does not control the racist prejudices of the jury or the outcome of the trial. What he controls is his own commitment to justice and his duty to provide a moral example for his children. His life in that moment is precisely what his thoughts make it, governed by virtue in the face of certain defeat. This is a Stoic arc, not because Atticus quotes ancient philosophy, but because he lives its core tenets under immense pressure. In cinema, a film like The Martian offers a brilliant, modern application of these ideas. Stranded on Mars, astronaut Mark Watney is confronted with a cascade of disasters. He does not waste energy raging against his fate or the hostility of the planet. Instead, he systematically applies logic and courage to each solvable problem, famously stating, "I am going to have to science the heck out of this." His entire ordeal is a masterclass in the dichotomy of control, focusing only on the next step, the next calculation, the next potato he can grow, while accepting the vast, indifferent universe that surrounds him. His resilience is a direct echo of Seneca's words, "We are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more in imagination than in reality." Watney conquers the reality by refusing to be conquered by the frightening imagination of his situation. These artistic expressions are not ancient history, they are the living ruins of the Stoa, rebuilt in the landscape of our modern imagination. They remind us that the struggle for a virtuous and resilient life is the central drama of the human experience. So, which story or character has served as your own personal guide? What book or film have you encountered where a person's quiet dignity in the face of adversity left a permanent mark on you, perhaps even before you knew the word Stoicism? Anxiety hums like a constant low frequency in the background of modern life. It is the dread of a future that has not yet arrived, a debt we pay on a disaster that may never come due. The ancient Stoics, however, saw this pattern clearly, and they designed a powerful therapeutic framework to dismantle it piece by piece. Their approach was not to eliminate feeling, but to correct the thinking that creates the feeling. Marcus Aurelius constantly pulled his own focus back from the terrifying horizon of what might happen to the solid ground of the present. He instructed himself to confine your attention to the present moment, a simple but radical act that starves anxiety of its favorite fuel, the imagined future. In that present space, you are likely safe, you are likely whole, and you have the capacity to handle the single moment you are in. This is the first step in Stoic therapy, a return to the reality of now. The next tool comes from Epictetus, whose dichotomy of control is a surgical instrument for excising needless worry. He would ask you to take your specific fear and hold it up to a single question: is this within my control or not? The answer immediately separates what is your responsibility from what is merely your distraction. Seneca's letters are filled with this therapeutic work. In one, he writes that we are often more frightened than hurt, and we suffer more in imagination than in reality. He is pointing directly to the mental amplification that turns a concern into a catastrophe. Let's apply this entire process to a common source of modern anxiety, the job interview. The days leading up to it are filled with racing thoughts. What if I freeze? What if they think I am not good enough? What if I do not get the offer? A Stoic therapist would guide you to first accept the present moment. Right now, you are not in the interview, you are at home preparing. Your only task is that preparation. Then apply the dichotomy. What is truly within your control? You can control researching the company, practicing your answers, choosing your clothes, and getting a good night's sleep. You cannot control the other candidates, the mood of the interviewers, or their final decision. All the energy spent worrying about those external outcomes is energy stolen from your preparation, the one thing that actually matters. Finally, challenge the catastrophic story. Is it true that not getting this specific job means your career is over? Or is it one possibility among many, a redirection you cannot yet understand. By reframing the event this way, you replace a storm of anxiety with a clear list of actionable steps, transforming a trial of the ego into a simple test of preparation and character. So, bring this Stoic therapy to your own life. What is the single biggest worry occupying your mind at this very moment? Take a mental pen and paper and perform the analysis. Write down the worry and then draw a line down the center of the page. On one side, list every aspect of this situation that is within your direct control. On the other, list everything that is not. Your path forward is now illuminated. It leads directly to the items on the first list, while the items on the second are released as mental burdens you were never meant to carry. Justice is the one virtue that demands we look beyond our own walls. The ancient Stoics envisioned a world without borders, where every rational being held equal citizenship in a single cosmic city. This ideal of cosmopolitanism faces its ultimate test today, as we confront global crises that ignore national lines and force us to consider our responsibility to people we will never meet. A shared humanity governed by a universal reason means our circle of concern can no longer end at the edge of our neighborhood or the shores of our country. The philosopher Hierocles offered a beautiful model for this expansion. He described our lives as a series of concentric circles. The innermost circle is the self, surrounded by family, then local community, country, and finally, all of humanity. Our ethical task, he argued, is to constantly draw the outer circles inward, to treat the stranger with the same consideration we reserve for our kin. This is not about erasing our local loyalties, but about extending the same fundamental respect and justice to those in the outermost ring. You can see this Stoic impulse in the modern movement for human rights, where activists fight for the dignity of prisoners of conscience on the other side of the planet. You see it in the principles of environmental stewardship, where the choice to reduce your carbon footprint is an act of justice for future generations and for island nations facing rising seas. It is the recognition that what is not good for the global swarm is, in the long run, not good for any single bee. This expansive view transforms abstract virtue into concrete action. It asks, how does my daily choices, from the food I buy to the energy I use, ripple out into that vast human community? This week, your challenge is to make one deliberate choice that benefits someone outside your immediate circle. It could be as simple as buying fair trade coffee to ensure farmers abroad receive a living wage, or donating to a disaster relief fund for a region you have never visited, or even just taking the time to learn about the history and struggles of a culture different from your own. Which outer circle will you draw a little closer to yourself, making the cosmic city just a bit more real? No philosophical blueprint survives for millennia without facing rigorous inspection. The very logic the Stoics champion demands we subject their own system to the same clear-eyed scrutiny, identifying its potential weak points and structural stresses. Among the most persistent criticisms is the charge that Stoicism advocates for emotional suppression, creating cold, unfeeling individuals detached from the richness of human experience. Others accuse it of a passive fatalism, encouraging quiet acceptance of injustice when action is required. An honest appraisal, however, reveals that these criticisms often stem from a misinterpretation of the original design. The Stoics did not seek to eliminate feelings, but to transform pathological passions, which they saw as diseases of the mind, into healthy, reasoned responses. Seneca draws this crucial distinction with precision. He writes that the wise man does not lack feeling, but overcomes it. He does not flee from emotions, but moderates them. He explains that the goal is not to have no grief, but to have grief that is without excess, a sorrow that acknowledges loss without being shattered by it. This is not emotional suppression, but emotional resilience, the difference between a gentle rain that waters the earth and a torrential flood that washes everything away. Consider a modern situation where this distinction becomes vital. Imagine a community organizer who learns that a local park, a vital green space for children and families, is slated to be paved over for a new parking lot. A misapplication of Stoicism might lead someone to think, this event is outside my control, I must accept it with perfect equanimity. This is the flaw of passivity, mistaking resignation for resilience. The correct Stoic response is to apply the dichotomy of control with wisdom. The final decision of the city council is not within your direct control. But your own actions absolutely are. You can control gathering signatures, organizing peaceful protests, presenting data on the park's community value, and mobilizing your neighbors. The virtuous path is not passive acceptance of a potential injustice, but courageous, reasoned action in the domain you can influence, all while managing your inner turmoil so that fear or anger does not corrupt your efforts. This is the nuanced application that avoids the architect's flaw. So, as you reflect on this entire philosophical structure, where do you perceive its weakest point? Is it the demanding ideal of apatheia, the freedom from destructive passions, which can feel inhuman in the face of profound grief? Or is it the risk that the dichotomy of control could be twisted into an excuse for political quietism? For ignoring societal ills, we actually have a collective power to change. What single aspect of the Stoic blueprint gives you the most pause, and why? A philosophy that is not lived is merely a collection of forgotten words. The grand architecture of Stoicism only becomes a resilient home for your spirit when its pillars are cemented into the simple, repeated rituals of your day. This is the final step, moving from admiring the blueprint to laying the bricks yourself, one sunrise at a time. A powerful personal practice rests on 3 daily anchors: a morning preparation, an evening review, and brief mindfulness reminders throughout the day. Think of your morning as a quiet construction site before the work crew arrives. This is when you set your intentions and fortify your mind for whatever the day may bring. Epictetus urged this daily rehearsal, advising his students to have the principles at your fingertips, ready to use night and day. He meant that your core Stoic tenets should be as familiar and accessible as the tools in a carpenter's belt, ready to be grabbed the moment they are needed. Begin with just 5 minutes of quiet reading from a Stoic text, not to memorize, but to absorb a single idea. Follow this with a moment of premeditation, consciously envisioning the potential frustrations and interruptions of the coming hours, not to dread them, but to disarm them. Acknowledge that difficult people, traffic delays, and minor setbacks are part of the natural flow of the day, and resolve to meet them with patience and wisdom. Your evening, then, becomes a time for quality control. This is your journaling audit, a private conversation with yourself. Ask the old Stoic questions with gentle honesty. Where did I go wrong today? Did I act with justice in that disagreement? Did I allow a trivial annoyance to steal my peace? And just as importantly, where did I make progress? This is not an exercise in self-criticism, but in conscious self-improvement, a way to track the slow, steady growth of your character. Throughout the day, you plant small reminders, your mindfulness cues. This could be a specific phrase you repeat to yourself before checking your email, or a deliberate pause to take a single deep breath before answering a phone call. These are the moments you practice the dichotomy of control in real time, asking, is this within my command or must I accept it? Imagine a sample schedule. At 6:45 in the morning, you spend 10 minutes with Marcus Aurelius. At 7, while drinking your coffee, you mentally rehearse accepting a potential work delay. At noon, before lunch, you take 1 minute to reflect on whether you have acted with courage so far. And at 9 in the evening, you write 3 sentences in a journal about your successes and failures in living your virtues. This structure is not a rigid cage, but a supportive scaffold. Your own ritual will be uniquely yours. So, for the next 7 days, what will your Stoic morning look like? Will you rise 5 minutes earlier to read a single passage? Will you write 1 sentence of intention on a note card you carry in your pocket? The design of your daily practice is the most personal architecture of all, the quiet space where you finally begin to build. Behind every celebrated architect stands a team of skilled artisans. We know the names of the master builders like Seneca and Marcus Aurelius, but the enduring structure of Stoicism was also shaped by brilliant, lesser-known figures whose contributions provided essential support and unique detail. These are the philosophers like Musonius Rufus, Cleans, and Hierocles, the master craftsmen of the Stoa whose work deserves its own excavation. Musonius Rufus, often called the Roman Socrates, shifted the focus of the school with relentless practicality. He argued that philosophy is not about crafting elegant arguments in a lecture hall, but about becoming a better person in the marketplace and the home. He taught that virtue must be practiced, not just professed, and he applied this to everyday matters like diet, clothing, and personal conduct, insisting that even our smallest choices are exercises in character. His student Epictetus carried this torch, but it was Musonius who grounded the philosophy so firmly in the soil of daily life. Then there was Cleans, the successor to Zeno himself. While Zeno designed the blueprint, Cleans was the engineer who fortified its spiritual core. His majestic hymn to Zeus is a profound poetic expression of Stoic physics, a surrender to the rational order of the cosmos. He wrote, "Lead me on, O Zeus, and thou destiny, to that goal long ago to me assigned. I will follow without hesitation. This is not a prayer of request, but one of alignment, a willing partnership with the universal logos." In our modern context, this resonates deeply with a growing environmental spirituality. It is the feeling you get walking through an old-growth forest, recognizing yourself as part of a vast, intelligent, and interconnected system that demands both reverence and responsible participation. We are not separate from nature, but expressions of its same rational principle. Another crucial but overlooked artisan was Hierocles, who gave us the beautiful model of the concentric circles of concern. He visualized our ethical obligations as a series of rings, with the self at the center, then family, local community, country, and all humanity at the outer edge. Our moral task, he taught, is to continually draw the outer circles inward, to treat the stranger with the same consideration we give to our own kin. This was the practical mechanics of cosmopolitanism, a tool for actively expanding our circle of compassion. So why do some philosophers achieve lasting fame while others, equally insightful, fade into the background of history? Is it the drama of their biographies, like Seneca's connection to a murderous emperor or Marcus Aurelius's burden of ultimate power? Or is it simply the random survival of their texts through the chaos of centuries? As you reflect on the guides you turn to in your own life, consider the quiet teachers, the unsung mentors whose profound influence on you might never be recorded in any famous book. What does their obscurity teach us about the true nature of wisdom itself? What gives a philosophy the strength to outlive marble and empire? The endurance of Stoicism lies not in its complexity, but in its radical practicality. It addressed the universal and timeless problems of human suffering, the fear of loss, the sting of injustice, and the anxiety of an uncertain future. Its design is psychologically realistic, acknowledging our flawed perceptions and offering a clear tool, the dichotomy of control, to manage them. It does not promise a life without storms, but it provides an unshakable anchor for weathering them. The writer Nassim Taleb captured this perfectly when he noted that Stoicism is about the domestication, not the elimination, of emotions. It is a philosophy for doers, not just for thinkers. Its robust framework was proven by its application across the entire spectrum of the human condition. A former slave like Epictetus used the same core principles to find inner freedom that an emperor like Marcus Aurelius used to govern the known world. The architecture was so sound that it could be inhabited by anyone, regardless of their station in life. This is the ultimate test of a durable idea. It must be as useful to the person facing a personal crisis in their small apartment as it is to the leader making a historic decision. So as you look at the ideas circulating in our own time, the self-help trends and the philosophical debates, ask yourself this. Which of these concepts are built on such a foundational understanding of human nature that they could still offer solace and guidance 2,000 years from now? What single idea from our era possesses the simplicity, depth, and practical power to speak as clearly to a citizen of the 40th century as Stoicism speaks to us today? You are the architect of your own character, standing before the drafting table of your life. The principles of Stoicism are not a finished mansion you must move into, but a set of timeless blueprints and durable materials for a personal renovation project that never truly ends. This is not a one-time construction, but a continuous process of maintenance, repair, and thoughtful addition, a gradual shaping of a more resilient and virtuous self. Seneca captured this daily effort perfectly when he wrote, "As long as you live, keep learning how to live." Every sunrise offers a new chance to lay a brick, to reinforce a wall, or to redesign a room that no longer serves your purpose. The goal is not a state of perfect, static completion, but the dignity and strength found in the ongoing work itself. Think of learning any complex skill, like mastering a musical instrument. You do not sit down at a piano for the first time and expect to play a flawless sonata. You begin with scales, simple and repetitive. Some days your fingers feel clumsy and the sound is discordant. Other days, a passage you have struggled with for weeks suddenly flows with a new clarity. The progress is incremental, often invisible from one day to the next, but undeniable over months and years of consistent practice. Your character is that instrument, and the virtues are the melodies you are learning to play. Each deliberate choice to act with courage in a small moment is like perfecting a single chord. Every instance where you exercise justice instead of selfishness adds a new layer of harmony to your life's composition. So, as you look at your own renovation plans, what single cornerstone virtue will you choose to focus on laying next? Is it the bedrock of courage to help you speak your truth in an upcoming difficult conversation? Is it the foundation of temperance to build greater discipline around a persistent habit? Or is it the solid ground of justice, committing to one small act of fairness in your community this week? Name that one virtue, and you have your blueprint for tomorrow's work. Even the most self-reliant philosophy was never meant to be a solitary pursuit. The Stoic path, for all its focus on inner strength, was laid out and walked in the company of others. Zeno taught in a public porch, Epictetus held court in a bustling school, and Marcus Aurelius had his philosophical mentors. They understood that we are social creatures, and our character is forged not in isolation, but through the friction and support of a shared journey. The philosopher Musonius Rufus was adamant about this, stating that it is impossible to learn something well without a teacher and without many fellow students to practice with. He saw the philosophical community as a vital training ground where we sharpen each other, just as iron sharpens iron. This communal aspect provides three essential catalysts for growth that you simply cannot replicate alone. First, it offers immediate feedback on your reasoning, a reality check for your judgments from people who understand the framework you are working within. Second, it normalizes the struggle, reminding you that you are not the only one wrestling with anger, fear, or procrastination. And third, it provides living role models, people just a few steps ahead on the path, whose example makes the virtues feel tangible and attainable. Think of a modern gym. You can certainly work out at home, but the energy of a group class, the shared effort, and the subtle guidance of a watchful instructor often push you further than you would go on your own. A Stoic community functions in the same way, but for your mind and character. So where do you find such a community today? The Digital Agora is your first stop. Online forums like the Stoicism subreddit are filled with thousands of people discussing daily applications. Social media groups host weekly themes and reading challenges. You can join virtual study groups that meet over video call to dissect a passage from Seneca or to troubleshoot a modern problem using Stoic tools. If you prefer face-to-face interaction, search for local philosophy meetups or start your own. The format is less important than the function, creating a regular space for mutual encouragement and honest accountability. This week, your challenge is to move from passive consumption to active connection. Reach out to just one person. It could be a friend you think would appreciate these ideas, a comment you reply to in an online discussion, or a single question you pose to a digital group. Share a Stoic concept you are struggling with and ask for their perspective. In that simple act of reaching out, you are no longer just studying an ancient blueprint. You are laying the foundation for your own living Stoa. We have walked through the long corridors of the Stoa, from its sunlit Athenian porch to the silent halls of its modern revival. This entire journey reveals a single, powerful truth. The architecture of Stoicism was built not on sand, but on the bedrock of universal human experience. Its foundational principles, the dichotomy of control, the cardinal virtues, and the alignment with a rational cosmos, have been renovated across centuries, yet their structural integrity remains unshaken. The blueprint endures because it answers the most persistent human questions about suffering, purpose, and resilience. The ultimate takeaway is that you are not powerless before the chaos of life. You possess the tools to construct a life of meaning, virtue, and unshakable inner strength. Marcus Aurelius left us with a final, breathtaking vision of this interconnected design. He wrote, "All things are intertwined with one another. A sacred bond is there." The universe is a single living being, possessing one substance and one soul. This is the grand perspective that makes every personal practice meaningful. Your effort to build your character is not a solitary, selfish task. It is a vital contribution to the health of the entire cosmic city. Every time you choose courage over fear or justice over convenience, you are reinforcing the sacred bond that connects us all. You are not just a tenant in a prefabricated existence. You are the active architect of your own character. The materials are your daily choices, and the blueprint is this timeless wisdom. Now, the final design choice rests with you. Which part of this ancient blueprint will you use to lay your next cornerstone? Was it the liberating clarity of the dichotomy of control, the practical strength of the four virtues, or the profound peace of seeing yourself as part of a single, living universe? Share the one Stoic principle you found most compelling in the comments below, and let us continue building this resilient community.